have some breaking news to bring you in the NBA. The Detroit Pistons are hiring Bickerstaff as their next head coach. That is according to ESPN. Bickerstaff was fired by the Cavs last month despite leading Cleveland to 2 consecutive playoff appearances, including the second round this past season. He replaces Monty Williams, who was let go by Detroit after 1 season with a big fat $65 million remaining on his contract. Welcome into HQ on a Sunday. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino alongside Ashley Nicole Moss and Brad Bakken. We have the crew here because NBA free agency is about to start, but obviously this breaking news is really big with Detroit hiring Bickerstaff as their next head coach. The NBA coaching carousel is finally complete. I will start with you, Brad. Your initial knee-jerk reaction when you're hearing this. Yes, be nice.
I mean, the news everybody's waiting for on free agency Sunday. Who's going to coach the Pistons? Can you guys imagine being paid $65 million, Monty Williams, to not do your job? You know how bad you have to be at your job to get paid $65 million to go away? So, look, Bickerstaff, I thought he did a pretty good job in Cleveland. I thought that team was on a little bit of an unrealistic timeline in terms of the redundancy of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland and Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, the same thing as far as the redundant bigs. So I think that team kind of just topped out roster-wise. I don't think it was really anything Bickerstaff did. And he also has his developmental roots in terms of developing young talent. That's all that this job is in Detroit. So you can only hope that Trajan Langdon comes into this with a clear view, with the clarity of hiring Bickerstaff or whoever he would have brought in to say, this is a developmental project. We can't look at this necessarily on wins and losses. Okay, Monty Williams did some weird stuff last year. But I think in a vacuum to just say the Pistons stunk, so we have to get rid of our coach, is a bad call because the Pistons do stink. And this is a developmental job. It cannot be wins. It has to be about Jaden Ivey. It has to be about Cade Cunningham. They draft Ron Holland at number 5 overall. They have to figure out Jalen Duren, all those guys. They have to figure out probably which 3 of them they keep and who they move off of, because they've got some redundancy too in the backcourt with Cade and Ivy. And so all of that stuff, trying to figure out that pie, is now Bickerstaff's job, and you just hope that the job description includes that and not the wins and losses.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack here. I think that Bickerstaff got like a short straw, or pulled the short straw rather, with the Cavs. I mean, you're looking here, consecutive trips to the playoffs, including an Eastern Conference semifinal. So it wasn't like he failed at his job. He failed at meeting the expectations of Cleveland, which, like Brad said, were very unrealistic, were very rushed. I mean, they're a good team. They're not that good to think that this was a team that was going to be hoisting a trophy anytime soon. So it just goes back to that constant conversation that we're having about head coaches in sports in general, but specifically the NBA. You're giving these coaches these short windows to go ahead and meet these very unrealistic expectations. That's right. And when they don't, you know, oh, well, moving on, it's his fault or her fault, and let's go ahead and shift to somebody else. No, you have to go ahead and put a coach in a position to actually succeed, and you do that by giving him time to go ahead and mold the players on his roster, try to keep those players together as much as possible, and then allowing the, you know, trials and tribulations of coaching in the NBA happen. I think that going to Detroit is going to be great for him, because if you look at this roster, outside of Taj Gibson, Evan Fournier, and Tim Hardaway, everyone is under the age of 30. That is great for a coach who wants to go in and get their hands dirty and go ahead and help mold a team into hopefully what can be a team that you can see in the Eastern Conference as a low-end playoff seed. I think there is a lot of talent on Detroit, but it's about having the patience to go ahead and develop that talent, and I think Bickerstaff is the guy to do that.
Yeah, just to your point about unrealistic expectations, let's not forget that Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen missed those final 2 games in this series, and you got to beat this incredible, I'm at a loss for words, Boston team that we saw. I don't know that any head coach could have you know, led the Cavs to winning an NBA championship.
This goes across all sports. unrealistic expectations are the root of frustration. If you go in and assume that you're going to be better, and I think J.J. Redick is going to be a prisoner of this to some degree with the Lakers if they don't upgrade their roster. You have to have your expectations in line, or you are setting yourself up for frustration.
Okay, let's talk about expectations then for this Pistons team. And Brad, I was just talking to Ashley about this because every time I look at the record for Detroit last season, the 14-68, I have to go back and like double check myself because it's hard to believe that a team only has 14 wins, but that is it, 14-68. So Ash, what would be considered a good start in your opinion, and what are your expectations?
More than 14 wins. Okay. Let's start there. Listen, I think that we talk about the Eastern Conference and we talk about the discrepancy between contenders and everybody else. There's the top dogs, and then there's the middle of the road teams, and then there are teams that are just in complete disarray. I think that there's a lot of talent on this Detroit Pistons team, but I don't even know if I want to put them as a middle of the road team.
No.
It would be a miracle if they even made the play-in. All you want to see. Oh, man. All you want to see from this Detroit team is an improvement on what you didn't see last season. And if that equals 30 games, that's a win. If that equals 35 games, that's a win. But again, it's about placing realistic expectations on this new head coach, the roster, and not crucifying him if he doesn't take them to, the conference finals. It's not going to happen. Just put that out there. It's not going to happen. They're not that good.
Really going out on a limb, not going to the conference finals. Jacqueline, you said you look at that record and you do a double take, you can't believe it. I would argue that I look at that record and I can't believe it, but for a different reason, that they won 14 games. No, listen, you guys are looking at this in a vacuum like any team. Yeah, 14 wins, it stinks, but if you watch that team on a night-in, night-out basis, some of the stuff Monty Williams was doing, the James Wiseman, No, Detroit, every game they won was a surprise to me.
Players, though.
So are the guys they're playing.
So are the guys they're playing. It's got to get at least 20. Come on.
No. So are the guys they're playing. What? Okay. But what would be a success this year? To me, I'm totally over the win total. It's arbitrary to me. It is individual development.
That too.
Okay.
So the guys that they keep drafting, Oscar Thompson, the guy they just took, Holland, even Cade Cunningham to a degree, none of these guys can shoot very well. It's one of my pet peeves. If you look back over the course of the NBA draft, say for the last 10 to 12 years, you see all these guys that you draft on athleticism from Emmanuel Mudiay, you remember that name, or Elfrid Payton, or Chris Dunn, or all of these guys were lottery picks, Ricky Rubio, and they all couldn't shoot. And I heard it so much in the draft prospects this year. Every time they come up on board, great athlete, two-way wing, he can get up above the rim, switchable defensively, all these things, needs to work on his shooting. As if it's just something you can get in the lab and become a good shooter. So to me, if you wanted to narrow it down to one thing, I need to see some shooting development from their perimeter pieces, and then as a whole, I want to see who the three guys that they're going to move forward with. They've got probably 4 or 5 now that you could consider kind of those young prospects, potential tentpole foundational pieces for the franchise. Identify who those guys really are and move forward from that.
By byproduct, that's going to equal more wins.
Maybe. By
byproduct, if their individual players perform better and are making strides in their development as individual players, that should equal.
You're right, but it could be so marginal. Like maybe they win 18, 20. It's
still more than 14.
Yeah. Okay. We're in agreement. Let's get more than 14. But I do think the number is somewhat arbitrary.
Yeah. And hopefully we're not on a watch where we're hoping that they don't break the historic losing streak in all of professional sports. That's probably a win too if they're not in that situation next season. Again, if you're just joining us here on HQ, we're following that breaking news in the NBA where the Pistons are hiring JB Bickerstaff as their next head coach. You're getting a look at the NBA coaching carousel. Looks to be complete. Monty Williams being replaced, of course, by Bickerstaff. As mentioned, J.J. Redick replacing Darvin Ham, and Brad doesn't have high expectations for that.
Change the roster. There are very few coaches that move the needle with the same roster. There's like a handful. The ones that succeed are the ones that get a different roster than their predecessor.
Well, we'll have to see what happens. And just a quick note, Bickerstaff